Hello, Frank.
Hey, hi, Scott.
Hello, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle. Hey, buddy.
Hi.
Beautiful day out there, nice and sunny.
It is.
A great day to learn more information.
Did you get the script?
I did. Thank you very much.
Good, good, good. All right.
We've got one of our agents sold a condo near Kipling subway station.
Oh, perfect.
We just thought, you know what, that might be a great, perfect dialogue for phoning there. Now, you have telelisting, I believe, right, Frank?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Or what, you've got the area code 905 or
905 and 416.
does that cover all of 416 and 905?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. 416, all of 905. It's about that $600 a month.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I got the telelisting that gives me up to 5 users.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I think I'm gonna have to probably invest in looking at that because we do have some people we want to get on the phones. And I'm finding that the older subdivisions, the older buildings,
Yes.
majority of those people still have landlines.
Yes, they do.
Where some of the new subdivisions, people aren't even getting a landline. So
yeah,
they're not even showing up on telelisting. I don't believe telelisting has the cell phone numbers.
Exactly.
But
so like what I'm doing with my office is actually there's going to be an email going out. I'm going to be charging them, let's say, $79 a month.
Okay.
Because, it could get costly, with 2 area codes every month, right?
Right.
And, yeah, I think I have a little bit of skin in the game too. I think $79, you get access to telelisting, you get 2 area codes. So I think that's what I'm going to be implementing anyways. Just help with the cost a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, especially for the ones that are going to be using it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
I've got Angelina with us too, so.
Perfect. Hello, how are you?
Good, you?
Good, good. Yeah, we've got had a good response of people that are going to be showing up today. So, and be able to cover some good information and get some updates on what's going on in Ontario, as well as obviously our new TRESA. Just wait a few more minutes. It's only a couple minutes to 1, but wait till some more people sign on and we'll get started. Hello, Elroy, we see you.
Hello, I had to unmute myself there for a minute.
There you are. Good to
Get my bottle of water ready to go here. Can hardly see that one. I got to move it there. There we go.
Good. Yeah, we just got a few more people signing on and then we'll get started. Hello, Clarence. Oh, you're on mute. You gotta unmute yourself there, Clarence. You're on mute.
I just sent you an email. I lost the invite, but I found it, so.
Okay. Well, that's good. Okay, a couple more just coming on, and then we'll get started. Okay, I've got 1 minute after 1. So I'm thinking we could probably get started. I do know that Dan Bolger unfortunately cannot be on the call. He has to attend a funeral today. But I did chat with him because I sort of wanted, before we get into the TRESA stuff, I thought it'd be good if we could just talk about what's going on in Ontario in the marketplace. I can give you a little bit of feedback on what I'm seeing. And seeing some just people sitting on the sidelines in the sense of some buyers that aren't sure on what the interest rates are going to do, what the economy is going to do. And then we have some sellers that are also sitting on the sidelines looking at, are we, should we be looking at selling now? If we don't have to sell, we're not going to because we don't know where we're going to go. And if we go, the new interest rates are really making it more expensive for us to move. So we're seeing some of those people sitting on the sidelines. But interestingly enough, just in the last 10 days, actually, a couple factors that after talking with different people around Ontario, what I am getting are people that are, let's say, seniors that have possibly other investment properties or the home they're in are now panicking a little bit about, is this market going to continue down or remain where it is over the next 12 to 24 months? Because they're basically saying, I don't have 5 years to sort of go down, sort of a little bit of depreciation and then wait for it to come back. So just in the last 10 days, talking with different brokerages, they're now getting some of their senior people are going like, you know what, we're just going to sell now because we know what we can get today. So one of the things, make sure that your agents are reaching out to their database, especially the seniors that during COVID were the ones that were basically saying, hey, we don't want to move. We just want to stay pat where we are. So, but now they're in a position where they're looking to do something now versus waiting 5 years possibly for the market to reappreciate where it was. So that was interesting to hear because a lot of those people have been sitting on the sidelines. Okay. The other one also is investors that have negative cash flow properties because of the interest rate changes, especially the ones that are in sort of the outskirts areas. I was talking about people in London. I was talking to people in Niagara Falls, St. Catharines. They are now looking at selling. They basically said, you know what, I'm going to capitalize on, let me get out now. I don't want to look at carrying this thing, even with the higher rents, but the mortgage rates have really escalated and made my cash flow way less. I don't want to feed these investment properties anymore. So we are getting where investors are willing to take a little bit of a hit to get out now versus trying to ride this out for a much higher appreciation that could be 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road. Anybody else hearing that or seeing that?
In Peterborough, we're experiencing the same thing here.
Okay.
And the strangest thing is a lot of comments lately, especially with newer agents, they can't believe we're now taking 30 days on average to sell a house.
Okay,
37 years we live with that, Scott.
good. That was quick. Yeah,
Right?
that was quick. It sold in 30 days.
But that every agent you talk to, they're commenting, wow, it's taken, I guess the last 3 years just spoiled them. Get used to it, kid.
Well, it also spoiled the sellers, like right now, there still are sellers that have properties on the market and agents are listing them at way above where they should be. But because the sellers aren't motivated, they're basically, hey, this is the price I know I used to be able to get. And if I can get it, I'll move. If not, I won't. Yet we're seeing where places are coming on the market where sellers are in a position where they have to sell, and they're, to get it sold or get activity, we're seeing more aggressive listing prices, more favorable negotiation taking place. Anybody else seeing that just recently? I can't be the only one noticing this. Maybe I live in a bubble. What do you see?
No, you're absolutely right? Like there's a lot of great opportunities for buyers out there. There's a lot more product on the market. So there's a lot more choices. Like you said, you're going to find people who are highly voted right now that are going to be a little more flexible with their pricing. So yeah, I think there's a lot of great opportunities out there right now in the marketplace. I've got a client right now. She's in a senior's home. I'm dealing with the kids right now. They're like, hey, what should we do? Should we sell now? Well, I said, again, we don't know what's going to happen in 3 or 4 months from now. If prices maybe go down, they could go up. Again, it's not known. We know what's going on now in the marketplace. So I'd rather do it now than later, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought, we talked about this before, that I thought when they announced the interest rate not going up, I thought that would have sparked a little bit of interest in the marketplace. I thought for sure maybe people sitting on the fence, but it didn't quite happen, right? What I was expecting, right?
Yeah. But it is going to, here's my opinion. Anyways, I was at a board meeting, and interestingly, I'm a big fan of listening to economists, especially Benjamin Tal from CIBC. And he was not the in person talking about, all the different ideas of what's going on. His biggest thing is the government overshot the interest rates, went up too fast. It really has hindered the sector that is anything to do with the real estate side. So now new home construction sites are not going to go ahead because it's just way too expensive to finance them. So he said the government's idea of being able to do affordable housing just went out the window because builders are delaying stuff and aren't even applying for more stuff because of the factor that it's just too costly to do it. The other factor is that he said, they raised interest rates to bring down the inflation. He showed a chart and he said, looking at everything that is in the actual calculation of the inflation is mortgage interest, what people pay for a mortgage interest. If they take just that one sector out of the inflation, it drops it to 2%. But by including it, which they do, it's still remaining high. So he said, like, the government is, they're basically on their own. They do their own thing. So he said, but it takes them a while to see what the effect is. And so he was saying, you're now seeing news of big corporations, big builders that are now going bankrupt, or they're bankrupting certain sites because they just can't afford to do it. You got a big one in Toronto. One announced recently in Mississauga, where their home base is Van Dyke Homes. Van Dyke has big projects, a lot in Toronto, a lot of outside the GTA. They've got 7 projects that are gone into receivership. They're a big, long time builder. You have, for big, large furniture companies. So he was talking about all of this which has all been affected by over leveraging and then obviously those loans coming up for renewal. So what he did say, where I'm going with this, is the opportunity in real estate right now, he believes, is in the next 4 months. He said the opportunity to buy with the anticipation that the interest rates are going to come down by the end of 2024, especially 2025, which is an election year. So he said, ideally, if you have buyers, you've got to let them know that we see as economists that 6 months from now, a year from now, especially 2 and 3 years from now, the area of Ontario is going to be a very strong marketplace. It's going to be a great economy, and prices will go back up. He said, right now, the next 4 months, great opportunity if you can get into the marketplace. And if you look at even taking a 1 or 2 year interest rate with the idea of knowing that you're going to renew at a lower rate than where you are today, he said, that's what you should be telling your people. Anyways, wanted to share that with you because I thought that's very, strong insight from somebody that talks to the government all the time. So on that note, just obviously there's some uncertainty in the marketplace. I believe that in December, they're not going to raise the rates, and which is going to show exactly what happened. If you look at any of the market charts, they said that back in a year ago, and then in January, February, March, April, May, we had a beautiful incline of activity. Consumers were confident, and then when they raised the rates in June, we saw the graphs and everything and the prices fall. That's what I think we're going to have. I think we're going to have a really strong spring, especially if they announce that the rates aren't going to change, and with the fact that they'll probably come down in 2024. Anyways, that's my thoughts. Any other thoughts about that? Okay. Anyways, that's what I see based on the information I gathered. The marketplaces around all of Ontario are very similar. I talked to Mike in North Bay. I talked to Carl in Sudbury. I talked to Clarence, obviously. I chatted with people in London, Niagara Falls. Everywhere, it's just a matter of right now, people are just sitting on the fence. If there's, they see the right price, they're jumping on it. And then we go from there. But be prepared, get your people out today, get them prospecting, get their leads going, because if they can go into 2024 with buyers and some listings, they're going to have a great 2024. But they got to start doing it now and work right through it. That's my thoughts. Just want to share that before we get into TRESA. Okay. TRESA, how many have been to either 1 or 2 or several of the information sessions, either from REA has done some, the local boards have done some, and if you have, I just want to follow just sort of what you're hearing. I've done 5 of them now. So anybody else been to any of them? Yeah, which one did you do? All right.
I did the REA ones with Ray Ferris online a couple times.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. I thought it was
read a lot of documents.
Yep. Good. And I did send a bunch of stuff out to everybody as well. Clarence, did your local board do anything, or they still on mute? There you go.
Actually, as you know, we've changed boards.
Yes.
We have more information at us right now than we've ever had in 35 years.
Good.
We changed amalgamated the boards, which we're still trying to get at. They closed my Peterborough office by mistake because I had a Durham office.
Right.
They moved because I was in it. We had terminated, and they claimed that it was our fault. And so my 4 or 5 Peterborough people weren't on the board for any access for 3. And after some really screaming and out, literally, the lady in Oshawa said, listen, I don't have to put up with that and whatnot. Well, Kim says, well, then do it right. Your fault. You terminated us. Anyway, so with the information, but I've been sending out stuff as you do, Scott, and I have a meeting on Monday with all the staff, and all but one have replied they're coming.
Okay.
And we'll have at least 3 or 4 hours to go, and I've said, like you said, hopefully you've gone through some of it. I've watched, I'm not sure with everything, our new authentication with the board, figuring that out, doing everything. It's just been I don't recall so much information thrown at one time.
And that's why I wanted to do this session, because there is a bunch of different information. It's all the same information, except it's how they are telling the situations. And it's, you go to one session and they don't have the full documentation yet. So they're saying, well, this is what it may look like, right? Well, now the documentation is all out and available for us as broker owners to look at. So I wanted to do this in sort of a step that is, it's not as scary as everybody thinks it is. Okay, I want you to know that. I've gone through it. I've talked to different, many different presentations, talked to different people. And the easiest way, and that's why I wanted to do this, is here's what you have to understand is TRESA is not a new act, okay? TRESA is actually a revision of the Real Estate Business Brokers Act of 2002. So the new name is actually TRESA 2002, not TRESA 2022 or TRESA 2020. It's actually a revision of an existing act. They are realigning some of the rules and regulations, and they are making it so that RICO will have more power. And to do that, they are, they talk about, the professional conduct. They talk about integrity, honesty, good faith. All of that is already in the act. They are just realigning a lot of that information so that where parts of it were under rules and regulations, other parts were under code of ethics. They are just cleaning that up. So it's not like it's a new act, it's revising a current act. Okay, so all of the stuff about what a broker or broker record or a company has to align with, we already do. Broker records are already responsible for the actions of your agents, the all of that, all of that is not changing. But what is changing is that RICO will have more power to the point where if they actually come across something that they see, even if social media, about the conduct of an agent or something that hits the news, they have the right to show up at your office without giving you notice. Okay? And to ask for that file. So I want to make everybody aware of that. They will have more power to investigate faster versus what they have to do now, where a complaint has to go through, then the process is you get a notification, you send in a defense, and then, but now if they come across something that they feel needs to be acted on, they can show up at your office. So keep that in mind, okay? It's just a matter, and that's not a big thing, because I know all of you make sure your files are complete, make sure everything is there, so it's not a big issue, okay? But they do have that extra power starting December 1st that they haven't had previously. The other thing that comes with TRESA, and this is a decision that you as individual broker owners of the company or owners of the company have to make your decision on. It talks about, as a brokerage, you have to decide on, are you going to be a brokerage representation, or are you going to be a, hang on, let me just get it here. So we have to make the decision, are you going to be a brokerage representation or a designated representation? Anybody already know the difference and want to share it with us before I do? Come on, all of you went through some of the videos. Who wants to take a shot? Anybody?
I'll take a shot.
Perfect.
Under a brokerage representation, anybody working for the brokerage works for the client. They can't represent a buyer coming in now that wants to buy a property if it's in a brokerage representation easily. It's much more complicated.
Correct.
That buyer coming in would essentially have to go to a different brokerage or find a different agent somewhere else to do their deal.
Correct. Yep. And they still could agree to multiple representation currently as it is done now. But majority won't, but you also have to give them the option. Exactly what Elroy was saying. So the difference is under broker representation is as soon as you have a client, that client is under the brokerage. So every agent in your company is now a representative of that client, which it is today, pretty much. As of December 1st, you as the brokerage need to decide on if you want to be a designated representation or brokerage representation. Designated representation simply means that whoever in your office that you want to designate as the client representative, you do. For instance, Frank, you got somebody in your office that gets a listing. On the actual listing agreements, and this is where you will see, it'll actually reference who the brokerage designated representative is of the client. And it will be the listing agent. And you can have more than one. So for instance, imagine if it's a team, you could actually put 2 or 3 or 4 of the team members on that as being the designated representatives of that client. Okay. Now, somebody else in the office who is not representing that seller, okay, can have a buyer representation agreement with somebody with a different client, and they are the designated representative of that buyer. Okay, and it says right on the buyer representation agreement who the name is the designated representative. Now that person brings an offer on the listing in the office. There are two different clients represented by different representatives in your office. This is not multiple representation. Okay, you have a seller client, designated agents. You have a buyer client, designated agents. The two cannot communicate. Those files cannot be shared with either one, and they must remain separate, and they owe a fiduciary duty to their client. Okay. That is the way I'm going to do our brokerage. And I would recommend for the brokerages out there, it is your choice. I believe that it's going to be a more simplified situation and still under designated representation. If a client decides that they do want to deal with the seller representatives, they still can do it, and it will be multiple representation, but that's the only time that multiple representation in your brokerage would take place, if at all. Any questions on that part before we move on? Okay, all right. That's the biggest change for a brokerage. Okay. The other thing is there's no customer service. All right. And so there are no longer are you going to have where you have a customer that, there is no such thing as customer. That's why a lot of the forms are changing. Okay. The other thing, understanding with that, and I actually going to play a video shortly that is from a lawyer that explained, it goes through situations, which is great. He goes through actual situations and says, all right, here's how this works. Here's how this works. Here's how this works. But I want to give you an overview. So when we go through this video, that you'll be able to go, okay, now I see what he's talking about. Okay, but practical places on how you're going to see this. No customer service. So they are either a client or they are self-represented. Okay, easiest thing to remember with self-represented, you can't do anything for them. Nothing. Okay. The one thing that has changed is, whereas if you had a customer that had not signed, let's say you had a customer who had not signed a buyer representation agreement, You could take that customer out and you could show them a bunch of properties that were not your listing, MLS listings. As of December 1st, if they are self-represented and they have not signed a client agreement with you, so buyer representation agreement with you, you cannot show them anything unless it's your own listing. Okay? So that is one of the biggest changes. Now, you can do a limited buyer representation agreement with that particular self-represented person if they agree for one property, two properties, three properties for a shortened period of time. We'll get to more of that in the video, but that is one of the biggest changes to understand. Okay? Whereas right now you could run around, show a bunch of houses, hopefully then do the offer. At the time of the offer, you do the buyer representation agreement. As of December 1st, it'll be against the law. It'll be against against TRESA to do that. Okay, so that's one of the biggest changes. The other thing that obviously is the RICO is coming out with a information guide. It is out now. I've read through it. I think I sent copies. RICO sent out copies to everybody. That is a mandatory that has to be presented. Whereas before we had working with a realtor was a suggested pamphlet. It was not mandatory. You as an individual brokerage could have created your own working with a realtor with those terms and expanded terms on it. As of December 1st, everybody that you talk to, anybody that your agents talk to, must get the RICO information guide before any action takes place. Okay, anybody read through it?
I tried to find a copy of the guide, but it's being updated on the website, so there's no copy available.
Oh, okay. I thought I sent one out to everybody that just says advanced copy not for use. I have it. I will get it to everybody. I thought I did send that out. Sorry about that if I didn't. I will get it to you. It's actually pretty good. It really talks about what can and can't be done, what the agents can and can't do. If you are a self-represented person, you're on your own. And so I will make sure that I get this to you. Okay, I'll double check and make sure if I did get it out, I may have missed a few people, but I did read through it. It does reference the self-represented party. So that's going to be the biggest change. Okay, is this has to be used. The fact that you can't run around with buyers in showing them different properties that aren't your listing unless they are under a contract, which I think is great, right? And it could be a contract for 12 hours, 24 hours, one property, but no longer can you take somebody through a property that's not your listing that are not under your a contract. And the reason is that if it's your listing and a self-represented person comes and wants to look at it, because you are representing the sellers, you can actually show as self-represented person that property because you're assisting the seller by doing so. We're going to cover more of that in the video. Okay. All right. Any general questions yet before I get on to the video, and we'll be able to stop going through it because we're going to talk about certain points. Any questions yet? Everybody confused, or have I helped so far? All right. Let me share my screen and get this going. Let me know when you can see the actual video. Just give me a thumbs up or something.
Got it.
Okay, all right. We can stop as we go through this. A lot of you know Mark Wisely, or at least have had him in an office or at a board function. Very always helping the realtors. What I like is he basically gets into, and you'll see here, how does it practically work? How is this going to work? So as we go through it, any questions, just unmute yourself and say, hey, Scott, what do we do here? Because we can pause and go all the way through.
Thank you, Joe. How many of you still confused? I'm going to try to I'm going to go a little quickly through I'm not going to repeat what was said, but I'm going to try to make it easy for you to understand this, and then we're all going to be available for questions. Many of you have taken courses with me before. It's a pleasure to see you. I've been doing this for a very long time. Now, some things never change. They always blame realtors for the market. They always complain about realtors. Nothing ever changes. Let me just tell you something. During the pandemic, they did a study. Over 40% of the economic activity in North America was because of the real estate industry. If not for the real estate industry, and you had to do it safely, without any guidance, the economy would have crashed. So thank you very much for what you did. I know I've written best-selling books for realtors, for landlords and tenants, and it's tough today. You all know what it's like when you qualify a tenant. If you make a mistake, it's a disaster for a landlord. So you ask a lot of questions. You ask a lot of questions because you want to see how they answer questions. Because it's not just what's on the paper, it's how they respond to your questions. That's how you know whether they're legitimate or not. And frankly, that's what FINTRAC is all about. Don't look at FINTRAC as a regulatory scheme. It's so you know the person in front of you is not a fraud. People have been stealing titles by pretending to be sellers. And you don't want to get mixed up in that, not because of FINTRAC, but because you don't want your name associated online with a fraud. So it's important to use these tools to help you. And if I can just say one thing, if you're trying to sell a house or a condo this year with a tenant, remember these words. Write a big check first. Go to the tenant, find them another place to live, and write a check. Because they're terrified. You know what the rental market's like. They can't find a place, so they'll dispute. And the eviction process is minimum a year. Buyers can't wait a year. Remember what you heard here. Write a big check. You'll get paid your commission quicker. Okay, so as you know, these changes are coming December the 1st, and I'm going to try to make it easy for you to understand. So I'll talk about this information guide that is going to be given out. You've heard a little bit about designated agency. We'll talk about disclosure and what that means, sharing information in bidding wars, and discipline. So these are the 4 categories I wanted to try to explain to you, and just how I see this working out. And so the information guide is, in a sense, replacing working with a realtor. How many of you remember when you started with working with a realtor? It wasn't easy to explain this, much harder to get it signed, but eventually you got it signed. So here, that's what they're asking you to do, is we're going to give you this guide, give it to the consumer, explain it to them, and eventually you'll see you're going to get it signed. And you've heard there's no more customers. You're either client or you're on your own. Now, I've read some versions of this guide, and I'm impressed because it is written in plain language to the consumer to explain, frankly, why they should be applying. It says, this is why you should be applying. It talks about your loyalty. It talks about your education, the insurance that you carry. But it also explains the risks when they go alone, when they don't want your help, that they're literally like going into court without a lawyer, acting for themselves. So to me, the guide is a good document. And it also explains, if they walk into an open house, that nothing they tell you is confidential because you're acting for the seller. Now, you're supposed to explain it to them. And Rico we'll be preparing a video that hopefully will be ready either December 1st or shortly after. So if a prospect calls you, you just say, here, I'm sending you a video. It explains all our services. We'll get together and I'll talk to you about it. And then the meeting about the explanation should not take you very long to explain. You know, people ask me, how do you explain mortgage when I'm sitting in front of a client, 75 pages? I say, okay, let's read it. First 2 pages, it has 5 years, interest rate, monthly payment, prepayment penalty. Do you understand this? Yes, I understand everything more. You see the last 73 pages? Yeah. If you don't make your mortgage payment, bad things happen to you. Okay, trust me, it's not going to be hard to explain this document to people. Now, it also explains the services, and I'll talk a little bit about that, the services you're going to provide and the compensation payable, but you don't have to change anything. You know, you can still show your commission the way you show it today. It just explains to a consumer. They may want to have a discussion with you about different compensation. For example, if there's a self-represented buyer on the other side, but you don't have to change. That's why the forms are not going to be terribly difficult. The number one complaint to RICO over the years has been, I put in an offer last night and it wasn't accepted, and now I'm stuck with this agent for 6 months. And nobody's going to give me a release and I can't find it. Okay, so to me, you know, why not initial the expiry date every time so this doesn't happen to you? The same thing about the holdover clause. Why not just explain it and initial it today? Don't wait for this guy. Just do it today. Explain everything you're doing about somebody. Designated agents.
Before he goes on, I just want to let everybody know, there did get samples, I think I sent them out as well, of the forms. The expiry date, you know how we used to have to initial it in that if it was expiring 6 months or later on the listing agreement or the buyer representation agreement, you had to initial that. On the new forms, they have to initial the expiry date. There's a new line with an actual initial beside the expiry date. So it doesn't matter if it's 60 days, a day, 2 days, they have to initial the expiry date. Okay, so there's no, it no longer is it just in case it's 6 months, it's every time. Okay, so that's one of the new changes on the forms.
Okay. Many times, a buyer and a seller on the same deal will call me up and say, Mark, we'd like you to be our lawyer. Well, can you blame them? But unfortunately, I'm not allowed to double end a deal. You understand? I cannot do that. But I can say to the buyer, you called me first, I'm happy to be your lawyer, but one of my partners here, they're going to act for the seller. And I treat my partner as though they're a lawyer in a different law firm. Our admin keeps the files separate. Nothing is shared. And so I represent one, they represent the other. That's designated agency, where your brokerage says to one of you, you are acting for the seller. You do everything. You treat everybody else in the brokerage like we're other agents. You represent your seller totally. Buyer agent. Oh, you represent the buyer by yourself. So now you're each acting for your own clients. No restrictions that there is in multiple representation where you can say what you can't say. You can represent them completely yourself. That's designated agency. And I think that's a good thing, frankly, without any restrictions of multiple representation. Now, could 2 team members represent a buyer and seller? 2 team. I believe they could. As long as the brokerage has policies where the files are kept separate, 1 team member is totally the seller agent, 1 team member is totally the buyer agent. I got a call the other day, we're a husband and wife team. Can we represent 2 different people? I said, do you have separate bedrooms? but I suppose they could do too. So you see, designated agency is not a terrible thing. It's a wonderful thing. I'm happy they introduced it because it allows more flexibility. And remember, the seller and the buyer both have to agree to this before it's done. Okay. So the forms are going to be similar. And as Joe was saying, it's about the service. Think about the service you're going to provide. The minute you provide a service, this person is a client. Okay, so let me give you an example. You know, there are some people who think they can do everything themselves. So they come to a brokerage and say, I want to post my property on MLS. How many of you have heard of these fools? I want to post on MLS. Okay, now, the brokerage doesn't have to do this, but they can say, okay, I'll do this today, tomorrow, December 1st. If they offer posting, that's a service. You're a client. So how much are they going to pay you? Well, some people only say, okay, pay me $1,000 and I'll let you post. And that's it. That's what the agreement says. I provide service. I'm a post. And you pay me $1,000. No commission. That's it. And you may want to be clearer. You get paid for the posting and you're not providing any other advice. So all the other agreements will be the same way. What service am I giving you? And then what am I going to charge you for it? How are you going to pay me? Just think that way. Now, there are problems with this, but we're going to go through. So, as Joe said, you can't provide services to somebody who's self-represented. You know, unless you're acting for, let's say, the seller. So if we'll get to the example, you're at an open house, somebody comes in, you can provide some assistance to this person. Why? Because you want to help your seller sell the house. So that's when you're allowed to do this with a self-represented person. So, but let's say you have this self-represented seller. Today, you might have signed a customer service agreement and said, here, I'm going to bring you an offer and you pay me commission. Starting December 1st, there's no more customer service. It's a client. It's a client if you want commission from that person, and you want commission. So you're going to sign an agreement with this self-represented seller that says, I'm going to bring you an offer, and if you accept it, I get paid commission. That's it. I'm not giving you any advice, but you're paying me commission. And they're a client for that purpose. So now let's say you have a buyer. You have your own buyer. By definition, you are now in multiple representation because you have a buyer who's a client and you have a seller as a client, even though it's a reduced kind of service level, but you could still do that. I mean, many of you have learned how to deal with multiple representation. Okay, for the buyer, please give me your best offer. Okay, and that pretty much solves multiple representation. So you're going to be able to do that, but that's the kind of agreement you're going to sign with the seller. Okay, so now we have this self-represented buyer, and this is where I have a real problem. How many of you got your start by taking buyers around to show them houses? They wouldn't sign anything with you, right? They wouldn't sign anything, but you wanted to take them around because they would build trust with you. You know, they would see how diligent you are looking at a house, setting up the appointments, being professional. Eventually, they would sign that BRA and put in an offer with you. I know you did this, but you see, you can't do that anymore. You can't show a self-represented buyer somebody else's listing unless you have an agreement with that person. Now, I understand that many of you out there never signed a BRA with anybody. And you take people around and you say, because that's the way I've always done it. If they want to go behind my back, I don't care. But you see, if you're providing services to a buyer without an agreement, in my opinion, that is a violation of the new RICO regulation because you're doing things without an agreement, which could result in some kind of a complaint. So how do you do this today? How are you going to do this? Like, to me, there's a couple of things. Maybe a limited BRA. So what do I mean by a limited BRA? Pay me $75 for every showing I take you to. No commission. No commission. I'm gonna take you to 3 showings today, you can pay me $75 a showing. Oh, if you sign a BRA at the end of the day, or by tomorrow, I'll apply this, or I won't charge you for this, who knows? But there's an agreement. Or, and I've been saying this for years, why don't you sign a BRA today for 24 hours? And I'm going to show you 3 properties. If you buy one of those 3 properties, I get paid commission. If you don't buy any of these 3 properties, we're finished tomorrow. Now, there is a holdover, so if you buy within 90 days, I still get paid. Now, why not? Why not do that? I've been saying to buyer agents, get this 1-day BRA signed right away today. Why are you waiting for this? Because it gets the buyer in the thinking about signing a payment. And then it becomes easier to sign an extended BRA. So I know that this is not going to be easy, but I think that as you get better at it, it won't be hard for you to get this signed. Now, I believe that there'll have to be a process. People are going to call you and say, I want you to send me links. You know, don't you send links of properties that are available? Well, that's a service. That's a service. So there's going to have to be something, maybe something on the website that says if you click here, you agree that I'm providing you services without a fee for this. So there'll have to be something that at least outlines a service and that you're not charging. Okay, because that's what you're going to do. But there'll have to be something, and more to come. There'll be more education coming about that. So now, let's say you're a listing agent at an open house. Okay, and this person comes in and says, I want to be self-represented. So you're going to take out the guide. You can show the property. You can show the property. But first, you're going to take out the guide and explain it. And then people say to me, should I get them to sign? I think it would be a good idea to get them to sign.
Before we go on, one scenario that we are going to have to adapt to is the practice of where you have listings in the company where other agents in the company sit on the open house. There'll have to be an amendment to the listing agreement that adds that agent that's going to sit on the open house as a designated representation of the seller. Everybody got that? Questions on it?
I have a question on that.
Sure.
Could you not have on the listing agreement stating that this a certain person other than signing the contract is the designated buyer rep that will be running open houses?
They're not a buyer rep. They're representing the seller.
No, but can you not have on the listing agreement that this person is a designated buyer rep to handle buyers that will handle open house traffic?
No, because the people coming through the open house, you have no idea what they are. And so when you're sitting on the open house, if you know, for instance, Elroy, that you're going to have your listing and you're going to have 2 or 3 of your other agents that might sit on the open house, they should be on the listing agreement that says they're a designated rep, they're a designated seller representation. They're part of that original listing or amendment to it, because the only way that you can show a unrepresented person the property at an open house is if you represent the seller.
Yeah, it's a service to the seller and that's it.
And the reason is that doing the open house and letting people come through represented by other people or self-represented is assisting the seller.
So any agent going to do an open house, whether it has to be added to the listing paperwork if they're not already there.
Correct. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
No, just wondering, because we brought in our brokerage policy that we have 2 people at every open house now for safety and security of the house and the other agents.
Yep.
So that could You know, if the senior listing agent doesn't want to be there, there could now be 3
Correct.
agents on that listing. Okay.
Right. Right. And it could be, they don't have to show up on the MLS information. They just have to be attached to the actual paperwork that the seller gets.
Yeah. Okay. Understood.
Right.
Fine. And you say, sign here where it says, I am an idiot.
Hey, let me back that up a
I'm
bit.
sorry, you sign, have to be something, and more to come, there'll be more education coming about that. So now, let's say you're a listing agent at an open house, okay, and this person comes in and says, I want to be self-represented. So you're gonna take out the guide, you can show the property, but first you're gonna take out the guide and explain it. And then people say to me, should I get them to sign? I think it would be a good idea to get them to sign. And you say, sign here where it says, I am an idiot. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. You sign there. Okay. Now, you will also be able to assist with the mechanics of filling it out in office. So think about this now. You're going to come to that open house with pre-populated forms. And the form will have everything that's on MLS. So what's on MLS? The name of the seller, the legal description, the property address, the brokerage name for the deposit, the chattels, fixtures, rental items. Everything's on MLS that you're going to put in the offer. Now it's debatable whether you could put a price in, even the asking price, because that's the seller's asking price. It's debatable. I personally would not recommend you did that, but you give it to them. You're not allowed to write a clause. No conditions, just give it to them and say, here, you're on your own, go to someone, fill it out, submit it, that's it. That's you're allowed to do when it means assistance for somebody. And remember, you can only do this if you're acting or your brokerage is acting for the seller. That's the only way you can do this for this buyer. So you're going to have this at your listings. Okay, so let's go back to the open house. Buyer comes in, they want to self-represent. You give them the pre-printed form, you give them the information guide, you explain everything, okay? And you say, go ahead, you can go find somebody, bring an offer, it's up to you. And then the person says, isn't the presentation today at 5 o'clock? Yeah, presentations today at 5. I don't have time to see an agent, and no lawyer works on Sunday afternoon. Well, you're on your own. Now, you could say, perhaps, I have a colleague here that maybe if you're interested, they can go through this agency, and if you want to sign them up as a client, then maybe for 24 hours, they could put an offer together for you. And if you win the property, you win. We'll have to go over things like multiple representation. I may have to explain something called designated agency, but we may be able to do that. And if you don't get the property after 24 hours, okay, we're free. Or maybe you could get into multiple representation. Say, I could do this myself. No, I have to explain certain things to you. If you want to be my client, because the seller is also my client, I have to get permission from the seller. Is that something that would interest you? It would be perfectly permitted under these rules because they said it, not you, and it could be done. Okay. I've been asked.
Hey, Elroy, on your situation where you're going to have 2 people on the open house,
Yeah.
because of safety, you could actually not have one of them on the representing the seller because they're there for safety.
Okay.
And if a buyer does come in that's not represented, the person that's not representing the seller could then become the designated buyer rep for the buyers that came through. And it wouldn't be multiple representation.
It would just get tricky that the listing agent who's there with this designated buyer rep not reveal any kind of motivation and, no storytelling.
Correct. That would be the only factor.
That's where it gets tricky. Up.
Yeah. Okay. But anyways, that is a
That's what I kind
possibility.
of thought we could do, but then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute.
Okay. Anyways, thought that's why I'm doing this way, to open up some dialogue and situations and things like that. So
Yeah.
if there's anybody else there that has, hey, I got a question on that, hey, just wave at me or put your hand up or whatever, and I'll stop. But that's why I wanted to do it this way, because this is real, this is situations that we're going to be in.
Yeah, I just thought that if something happened to the open house, also we had to call another agent in quick as a backup. All of a sudden now we got to get the listing agreement revised quickly by the seller and all that. That's a real headache suddenly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we could have this buyer rep on site. It just got to be very careful. There's no chit chat going between the two of them.
Correct. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Questions about sales office for builders. There are a lot of brokerages that do sales at builders' offices, and people come and they call to make an appointment. Now, sometimes they come in with realtors, which is a little bit easier, but sometimes they want to come in themselves. So what are you going to do at a builder sales office? In my view, they would have to send the information guide, maybe the Rico video link. Hopefully it'll be ready and say, please go over this and decide what you want to do. And now the buyer comes in and they say they want to self-represent. Well, now you've got a builder that you're dealing with here, and no builder is the same. So you're going to have to deal with the requirements of your builder. And, it's different. Because if they're buying a condo from a builder, they have 10 days to change their mind. If they're buying a detached house from a builder, sometimes there is no time to change their mind. The deal is firm when they walk out of that office. So how are you going to deal with that? Because you may fill out the offer. You could fill out the entire offer with the deposits and everything and say, this is the offer the builder will accept. You want to sign it. But the builder will probably not let them take that offer away. Because some builders say, no, we don't let this offer go away. You want to sign it? You sign it. Maybe there's a condition on lawyer review in there. I don't know. So you see here, you may want to speak with the builder lawyers just to see what is it they want you to say to this buyer so that there's no issues that arise later. Okay. The schedule. Joe said you want to put your services in the schedule for a listing to be all right. Many of you have marketing packages. They're wonderful. You go see a buyer and seller and you say, this is why you should choose me. This is the staging I do. This is the videos. This is the pictures. Why not put that as a schedule in the listing today? When you hire me, this is what you get. But BRA, this is what you get when you hire me. To me, this is common sense. I believe you should do this now. I'm going to send you links. I'm going to send you a summary of market activity every day, couple of days. You're going to get an email from me. Why not? You're good. Why not just explain this and put it in to your offer? Okay, disclosure. So I'm going to try to explain.
I'm going to stop 1 second there. Okay. In the actual buyer representation agreements and the listing representation agreements, there is a section now that says describe your services. Okay. And what they're referencing here, which is a good idea, is when our executives take a listing, and I do it too. And I do market evaluations for you. I do home staging. I do this, I do that. I do an open house. I post it on the MLS, and it talks about the listing agreement, talks about being able to advertise. But now what the issue is Rico has several complaints where it's, well, my agent said they were going to do this and they didn't do it. And a lot of times it's the agent didn't really say it, but the consumer expected it. And that's where the complaints come in. So under the new forms, both buyer representation agreement and seller representation agreements, there is a section that says these are the services. So creating that Schedule A for your listing agreements and your buyer representation agreements would be great. And it basically is just highlighting all the things that your agents currently do. But now that becomes a schedule to the agreement that they're signing for the listing and a schedule for the agreement they're signing for the buyer representation agreement. Any thoughts, questions on that part? Okay,
Plain disclosure quickly. Today, people ask me, what does a seller have to disclose to a buyer? A foundation problem, mold behind the walls, a major leak never fixed. These are things that a home inspector wouldn't be able to find. So if a buyer finds this out after closing, they could sue the seller for the non-disclosure. That's it. That's it. A seller does not have to disclose suicide or murder. Legally, they do not have to disclose that. But many of you would agree that would bother most buyers. But legally, they don't have to disclose it. So under the new rules, if the seller tells the agent that there is a foundation problem, the listing agent finds out, they will have the same obligation to disclose this to a buyer and to a buyer agent. It will be your obligation as well, but you will not be obligated, for example, to disclose murder or suicide if the seller tells you not to. So that's one of the main changes, is that if you know about this hidden defect, you will have to disclose. So to me, what that does is it puts more due diligence on a buyer agent. Okay, if you're a buyer agent and you know this, you say to your client, would it bother you if there was a murder or suicide? Yes, it would bother. So you put that clause, you know the clause that says the seller represents and warrants no murder or suicide. And so now the seller has to tell the truth. That's what you do to protect the buyer. That's what you should be doing to protect a buyer. Code of ethics, okay, they stripped out most of the code of ethics, and really now it can be simple. Just be a professional. That's what it should be. Be a professional. And that means that you treat everybody, you know, properly. And so you should be doing this anyways. You know, this to me is not about RICO. Now, there's one thing here that I saw, I think it's still there, but you can't settle with somebody by saying they will withdraw their complaint with RICO against you, or that they won't make a complaint to RICO against you. Many people put that in settlements. You can't do that anymore. But I wouldn't be afraid of it. I've helped so many agents over the years with RICO complaints, and I find that many consumers think that RICO's a collection agency. They're not. They find out very quickly they're not getting any money from RICO. RICO's just there to see if you violated, you know, something in the code, etc. And once they find that out, they're not rushing. So if you settle with them, I wouldn't be worried about this. And frankly, you know, this is more about, you know, just treating people with respect, and that's how you build referrals anyways. It's not about RICO. So the changes to bidding wars, as Joe said, you're going to be able to share information if the seller wants. So if the seller says, tell the deposit, tell the closing date, say whether the offer is conditional or not, you can disclose that to every other bidder. So the seller decides, and it's interesting, I believe, you can't disclose, yes, the identity of the buyer. And as you know, the seller can change their mind during the process. So the question people keep asking me is, can you include an opt-out clause? Opt-out. And I know that for many years, people have been using my own bidding war clause, which has said that this offer is on the basis that there's no other offers, and if it turns out that the seller received no other offers, you know, then you can pull it back. So this clause has been used effectively for years to protect people when a listing agent, not lying, says I'm expecting 3 offers. But then 2 people change their mind when they hear there's 3 offers. So only 1 offer comes in. And then you find out you're the only offer. This clause would give you the right to either cancel it or reduce the price. And many agents over the years have told me when they use this clause, they were able to reduce the price by 5%. So the question is, could you put a clause in an offer today under these new rules that say, here's my offer? Joe referred to it as a confidential offer, but What if you just said, if you want to share this offer with anybody else, you have to tell me, and I have an hour to cancel the offer. And if I don't cancel it, you can share it with everybody else. Now, I think OREA may be working on a similar type of clause. I just get nervous if an agent missed that in the schedule, and then they started sharing information. Who knows? But I believe there will be an ability for a client to opt out of this if they don't want to play in that sharing information game. And Joe talked about the changes to discipline, and one of the big things, you can lose your license now if you commit something very terrible in your practice. And the penalties are much higher now. 50,000 for a register and 100,000 for a brokerage. And the appeal, you're not going to win any appeal. This appeal body, they hear appeals for car dealerships too. Trust me, you're not going to win any appeal. So you don't want to get in trouble this year with RICO. So, RICO has much greater powers. If they read something in the newspaper about an agent, an article, they can just show up at the brokerage and check all the records. So as a brokerage, you really want to make sure everybody's behaving properly for everything. And so, I've said this already, the main principles are, explain everything today. Get all your instructions in writing, especially in a bidding war. All instructions, initialed, etc. It's not about RICO. It is about, this is how you've learned over the years how you get referrals. That's how you get referrals, by doing that as well. But please, no sharing before December 1st. I know many people want to run out of here and say, oh, I'm sharing information. No, not till December 1st. Okay. There is a phase 3, which is scheduled for late next year, I think, just to give you an idea. Good news, specialist designation. So you want to call yourself a leasing specialist, so you want to call yourself a condo specialist. There'll be education, and hopefully you're going to be able to put that title next to your name. I don't know all the education requirements coming, but there will be fighting a cooling off period. Many of you have already heard a little bit about this. The province has been making noises that every resale buyer should be given 3 business days to change their mind. Imagine before Labor Day, Friday, somebody put in an offer, accepted, they have till the following Thursday to just say, sorry, I changed my mind. Now, this is in BC already. And the penalty in BC is 0.25% of the price, meaning $1 million offer, I changed my mind. Next Thursday, they got to pay the seller $2,500. I can see a lot of buyers doing this. And unfortunately, when I'm at a dinner party and people ask me about real estate, I say, do you think this is right? And many people around the table say, yeah, that's a good idea. Bidding wars are crazy. People should be able to change their mind because they're thinking like buyers, not like sellers. So I can only say that the committee that's been working very hard on your behalf will help to bring in designated agency. They will fight this. And I hope the province does not introduce it. I do believe, by the way, as I said earlier, if you're buying a pre-construction detached home from a builder, you should also have 10 days to change your mind. I believe that was fair, and I hope that at least comes in. There will also be regulations of auctioneers selling real estate, long overdue. I never believed an auctioneer should be able to sell real estate unless they are a registered brokerage. So I hope, did you learn something today? Thank you.
Okay. Questions? Did it clarify anything for you? If you have a question, ask, because I'm pretty up to date on it. And I can certainly reach out and any question at all, because you want to be able to explain it to your executives. First of all, it's not that scary. Okay, it's not. Hopefully by listening to Mark, you can see that as professionals, we already do a lot of the stuff that's in here. We already go through what services we're going to provide. Now it's just being attached to one of the agreements. Okay? 2, we always explain the expiry date, and we always explain the holdover clause. No different. Now it just has to be initialed. So that's not a big change. Okay? The fact that we're still representing sellers, no different, right? Except now we have to clarify and explain, which we always did, the commission and how it is, for what services, how are we getting paid? Okay? Same with the buyer. One of the things that you do have to make sure that if anybody in your office is on the buyer representation agreement, there is a tendency to put commission as per MLS. I have been teaching for a long time. My group do not put that. Okay? Anybody who does have that as a practice in your office, please stop doing it that way on December 1st. Because, excuse me, because under the situation is you're representing the buyer to get paid by the buyer. Okay? So if you put as per MLS, MLS is flexible. There's 1 cent, $1, 1%, 2%, 2.5%. There's variations. So if you had to go to court to enforce your buyer representation agreement and it says as per MLS, there's no grounds you can stand on. Okay? I have been to court with our buyer representation agreements 3 or 4 times because they actually have a figure or an amount in the actual buyer representation agreement that's enforceable. Also, under TRESA, you are either representing the buyer or the seller. And you can only get paid by your client. And in the buyer representation agreements where the commission is, it states a usually 2, 2.5, whatever the number is, a percentage. Under that, there's a paragraph that says that any amount that you collect through the transaction by way of a possible fee payable to the cooperating broker, the amount that the buyer owes to you is reduced by the amount you collect. Okay? That is always been the understanding of the buyer representation agreements. And as of December 1st, you want to make sure that those are filled in and explained that way, because you can only get paid by your client. And a lot of times the seller will not be your client. Okay, so putting as per MLS indicates that you're basically saying that the people on the other side of the deal are paying you, but they're actually not. And they can't because they're not your client. Questions on that? Clarification? No
Is the money
questions
still
still.
coming out? Excuse me, Scott, is the money still coming out of the transaction?
If, as long as on the MLS, it says that the cooperating broker is receiving this fee, then absolutely. But in a situation, for instance, easiest way to explain it, I have a buyer representation agreement representing my buyer. They're going to pay me 2.5% plus HST. I sell them a property where on the MLS it says 2%. So I get 2% from the brokerage. I then invoice the buyer 0.5% plus HST. to match up to the contract, or I do an amendment to my buyer representation agreement that amends the 2.5% to 2%. That's how you have to handle it. Does that clarify it, Clarence?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions on that so far? So everybody's okay with listing agreements now? Not a big scary thing. Biggest thing is who's going to represent the seller, which agent, who's going to be the designated representative. Okay. What's your commission? What's the expiry date needs to be initialed? So not big changes there. Schedule A. This is what I do as a listing agent. These are my services. Okay. Buyer representation agreement, same thing. Who's representing that buyer in your brokerage? It could be 1, 2, 3 people if they're on a team. If you got three buyer representatives that are going to be running around with the buyers, then you need to have all 3 of them on there. Only the people that are on the actual agreement can represent the buyer, or they could be added to, as long as the client agrees. Okay. Commission. What are you getting paid? What services are you giving? Okay. And those are really the 2 agreements that we've been dealing with. The other change is self-represented person. Simple. Can't tell them anything. Can't help them with anything. Except that in a way that is you're assisting your client, as we referenced within the listing agreement. You're a lister, you represent the lister, the seller. Here's what you can do. You can assist, just as Mark said. You cannot give any advice. They're on their own.
So Scott.
Yep.
So that's where I think it's going to get really tricky with the SRP. So they want to buy your listing. So
Okay.
obviously I can't help them draft up that agreement of purchase and sale. So they're going to have to do it somewhere. So either they go to their lawyer or possibly draft it up themselves. I have no idea.
No, or your listing agent
Yeah.
says, look, I can't do it unless, if they ask and say, look, I can't do it. Here's the reasons why. Here's the working with the realtor choices. Here's your disclosure. And in here, it talks about multiple representation and says, there is such a thing as multiple representation that, could be limited representation. And in the buyer representation agreement, it could be limited to the point where that self-represented person has hired you, and in the description of services, to write up the agreement to submit an offer on this property.
So, but let's just say they don't take that, okay? And they just say, sorry, I don't need your help with that. I want to be self-represented. I want to draft, I'm going to take it to my lawyer or wherever they're going to go. They're going to draft up an agreement of purchase and sale.
Yep.
Now, obviously, my obligation is to the seller. I'm going to protect their best interest.
Correct.
Whatever they give me, so what this word is, there's going to be a problem. So they can put whatever they want in that agreement. Doesn't necessarily mean it's in the best interest of the seller. They can put whatever clauses they want, right?
Correct.
So you bring it to the seller, the price is attractive now. And now the dilemma now is, oh, we love the price, but hey, let's take a look at the clauses that are in here. It might not be in your best interest to accept something like this. Well, we like the price, right? But no. Let's take a look at the meat and potatoes of the offer. The clauses are one-sided or whatever goes in there. I have no idea.
Okay.
So I would say that could be an issue or a problem I see with the self-represented.
Except, I guess the easiest way, Frank, good point, but the easiest way to explain it is any offer we're getting from any other agent anywhere in the MLS system, right? They're representing their buyer and they're submitting clauses, pricing, deposits that's in favor of their buyer. in a normal market, like in, in the stuff we
Right.
went through, right? But in a normal market, they're representing their buyer and they're submitting the clauses that they want and how the terms that they want for their buyer. So it would be no different even if a self-represented person did it. The only issue would be, where did the self-represented person get those clauses? Whereas, if it's coming through, an MLS
Right.
co-op, typically they're going to be standard clauses that we've all dealt with. So, but the offer that comes in from a self-represented person, you're going to go through it with the same, fine-tooth comb that you would with any offer, right? To best represent your seller. And it would be simple as, Mr. Seller, you know what? I'm representing you. I don't like these clauses. Here are the clauses I recommend. Let me rewrite the offer. We will do it as a sign back from the seller to the buyer under the terms that are acceptable to us. And I'll just send it over to the self-represented person and they're on their own to decide what they want to do. Right? Not much different, like really not much different, I don't think, than what we're doing today. It's just re-educating our executives, and obviously to really go through all the details of every offer, which I know all of us as broker owners, we train our people to do that. So I don't think that's a big change. It's just that the offer is being submitted from, somebody that's really a private person versus coming through a traditional format. That's what I see. Thoughts? Yeah. Any other questions? Going through this, has it helped, or have I confused you more?
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
I just have a question about self-represented buyer.
Okay.
So I know we cannot show them houses before signing a client agreement, but if they choose to be a self-represented party, can we even send them the listings or no?
No, and that's where Mark was saying the only way that you can the only way you can provide service to anybody is if they are your client. So a lot, and this is a question that I actually didn't think of until he mentioned it, like on our websites where people can sign up for receiving, daily updates or immediate updates, there will have to be something that a consumer consents to, that they are receiving this service as a client of the brokerage to be able to receive this information. And there are websites out there already that you sort of get a glimpse of, 2 or 3 little things, and then to get any more information, you have to sign up for it. I think we may be seeing that because under RICO as of December 1st, you cannot provide any service to a self-represented person. So Nelson, I think we definitely on the websites, or there may be a gray question area there, but definitely if you have agents in your office that are sending directly to a consumer and they don't have a contract signed stipulating that that is the service they're providing, then they can't. But they could send the buyer representation agreement to the self-represented person and say, please understand, as here's the RICO information guide. As per the guide, I cannot provide a service to a self-represented person. However, I have attached a buyer representation agreement that states that I will provide you the service of sending you MLS listings, and there shall be no fee for this service.
Oh, okay.
And if they have that, then yes, they could send that information because they now became a client of the agent. The agent's not taking a fee. The agent's basically saying, here's the service that I'm providing, which is sending you MLS information or listing information, and I am not charging you for that.
Okay, I see. Yeah. Hmm.
Scott,
Yeah,
so obviously after December first, if you've got clients doing, if you're sending them emails, through prospecting searches, right? I mean, they need to be signed. One of the things that we tell our agents, you gotta get the buyer agency thing signed.
correct. Now, I have heard, and I have not got this confirmed, I have not seen it anywhere. Maybe somebody on this session has, that Rico is giving a 6-month time period for us to get through all these changes. They're not going to show up on December 2nd and say, Mr. Broker, you have agents that are sending out information to people that are not under a contract. They're not going to be doing that. But absolutely, the first thing that every client that you have, or anybody that you are a consumer that you are supplying any type of service to, should immediately receive the Rico information guide with an explanation of saying, as of December 1st, under the new, under the revised TRESA 2002, these are, this is a new way of doing real estate. And here's the guide, and I would like to explain the services that I could provide and what your options are. So those would be steps that you want to take. But I have heard from a couple different places that Rico is allowing sort of a 6-month transition period before they will start implementing fines and things like that. Does that help, Frank?
Sorry, Scott?
Did that help? Explain?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, great, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Scott.
Yeah, Nelson.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest challenge for our office. Not even agents sending to their clients, but also from the website, like you mentioned.
Right. Yeah, and that's where I believe we're also going to see, I haven't seen it yet, but I believe you're going to see from all website providers, there will be an update where it's going to talk about, I'm sure there'll be a sign up as part of the consumer sign up, states that you're going to have to come up with what is the service that you agree to provide for them to receive this online information.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of adding a wired up agreement to the website, right?
And there are some sites out there that already do have that.
Yeah.
But I think there'll be a transition of something similar to where they have to sign up to get the information.
Okay, yeah, thanks,
Okay.
Scott.
Hey, Scott, maybe we should have our prime agent websites have that put in right away.
I'm thinking I wouldn't be surprised that the prime agent will be something that we can put in there and just have it so that there's and the other way too that I was looking at it is, once you have a client that, or so let's correct that, once you've had a consumer that has signed up to get the information on your website, after December 1st, the prudent thing to do is to send them the Rico information guide and say, thank you very much for signing up for receiving the information as of December 1st. The process of real estate in Ontario has gone through some changes as per this Rico information guide. Please review it. If you would like to continue to receive information from my site, I agree to provide that service to you for no cost. And if you can show that you've sent that, and if they could acknowledge back, say, that's great, I agree to receive the information, no cost as part of your service. There you go. You've done what Rico says that you have to do.
Okay.
Okay, but I'll look into the prime agent stuff, but that's how I see sort of this transition period would be. You know, Rico's basically, they're doing this because they get complaints from the consumers. It's always been, I was told this was the services they were supposed to give me, I didn't get it. This, and then you get the agents going, I did, and now it's, here's the options, here's what I'm providing, here's the service I'm providing. When I'm complete this service, I expect to get this compensation. And that's really what this is all about. So, so there'll be a few extra steps, you know, especially when you're dealing with everybody is self-represented until they're under a contract. And how you deal with the self-represented people, there'll be more steps that you have to do. And there'll be decision making that if they don't want to sign, you can't work with them. Nor can any other realtor. Okay. Any other questions, thoughts, anything that pops into your mind right now? As I say, I've gone through lots of this, and there will, after December 1st, there's stuff that's going to be all kinds of updates. There'll be, I wouldn't be surprised, there'll be new forms. I wouldn't be surprised there's a new form that'll come out, Elroy, that'll be about, you know, consumers receiving, you know, information online. There will be stuff that'll come out that we'll be able to utilize, but in the short term, it really is all about, consumers have to get the guide. They either decide to be your client or they're self-represented. And what you can do for them as a if they're self-represented is pretty well nothing. It is nothing. Unless you have the listing that they're asking information about. Okay. Hopefully this session was helpful to give you some ideas of exactly, you know, it's not as scary as it seems. It's just keep in mind, it's all about what services are you providing, detail the services you're providing, what compensation are you getting for the services you provide. So not really much different than what us as professionals have always done. Just gonna be a little bit more detail. Okay. There's no other thoughts. I probably went a little bit longer than everybody expected, but I thought it was important to really talk about, you know, what the real scenarios are and what we're going to be coming, you know, what's going to be happening.
Scott, Claire's here. One thing, for my meeting Monday morning, is it possible to get Mark's video? Or are you recording, it says recording the whole thing today? Because it was excellent. I found it excellent. Your input is invaluable. So
I have recorded the whole thing today. I will get my partner in crime when it comes to all the social media stuff. Michelle will get it sent out to everybody. So it's all recorded, and absolutely you can use it anywhere and how you want to.
well, I would just save
Very much.
wheel there. But you did an excellent job.
Thank you.
Great job. Great job. Well done.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Scott. Now, you're hosting another one for the agents next week, or?
Yeah, I'm doing one for my brokerage, and if any of you decide that you want your people to be part of it, just reach out to Michelle, let me know. And it's basically going to be very similar to what I just did today. I'm going to be showing Mark's video, going to be talking about situations, but I did want to share with you as the brokers first on, you know, that you could use this in your office. But if you do want to participate, it's Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And I'm going to go through very similar to what we just did.
Yeah, if you can send us the link, Michelle, that would be nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same.
send it a link. I'll share it with our team
Yeah.
members, and we'll see who joins up.
Same
The
Great.
more times they hear it, the better.
Exactly. And the more times and understanding that, you know, this is just the start. There are going to be, you know, I've already talked with Aria. They know there's going to be some new documents that they're going to have depending on situations and things like that. So But as far, and I read through all of the new paperwork and the altered paperwork, it's not that scary. It really isn't. Okay,
Okay, thanks a lot,
Really-
Scott.
really appreciate everyone taking the time. I know it was longer than anticipated, but I thought it was vital information. Thanks for all the input. And any questions whatsoever, reach out to me, okay? If you have any questions on this whatsoever.
Thanks again, guys.
My.
Bye.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you.
We just finished learning what I'm gonna teach you on Monday morning.